Hey, welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove. And before we get started with this week's episode, I just want to remind everybody that if you want to, if you just can't get enough of the From the Shadows podcast, go check us out at fromtheshadowspodcast.com. It's got links to, I think, just about everything, including our TikTok, our Instagram, our Patreon page, where you can get episodes a little early and commercial free, and some extra content when me and the Howler are not too lazy or can find time to do it. There's all kinds of cool stuff on there, all kinds of links. Like I said, you can find our YouTube stuff too. And then if you really want to follow us, you can go find me on Instagram at Shane Grove Author. And any of those ways is a great way to get a hold of us, especially the website. You can hit the contact button, send me an email if you have a experience that you want to come on and share, because that's who we love talking to, is people, eyewitnesses and people with experiences. And that being said, this week's guest has a multitude of experiences in many different paranormal levels, I should say. And she is a good friend of a good friend of the podcast. So I want to welcome a fellow Buckeye. That's, for everybody that doesn't know, that means a fellow Ohioan. Okay. Fellow Ohioan. And a member of Project Zoo Book, which may give it away who her good friend is, Amy Boo. Welcome to the show, Bigfooter extraordinaire, Tina Sams. How's it going, Tina?
Hey, thanks for having me.
No, I'm glad to have you. Amy, we had Amy on a couple weeks ago. She's a great friend of the shows. She's a lot of fun. And, afterwards we were talking about, some people that we needed to reach out to and talk to, and you were at the top of the list.
Yeah.
And there you go. So anytime you can be at the top of Amy Boo's list, you're doing pretty good. So you're from over near Youngstown, right? Youngstown, Ohio.
Yep,
Okay.
little suburb right off of Youngstown.
Okay. So I know from talking to you, and I know from talking to Amy, that you guys, go to some of these events together. You do, you're both involved in Project Zoo Book. So that's the today, what's going on. That's the today. So, but how does somebody on the outskirts of Youngstown get interested in the paranormal, not just Bigfoot, but paranormal stuff in general?
Well, I always tell everybody I was probably about 10 or 11, 12 years old before I realized that other families didn't sit around at Christmas and Easter and talk about ghosts and Bigfoots. And I think it kind of stems back. My parents, my mom had 12 brothers and sisters. My dad had 3. And they lived my parents and I, when I was little, lived in a very haunted house. And everybody in the family experienced stuff there. So holidays were kind of, remember that time the TV went on, or remember the time the face was in the window? So it just has always been part of my life, I could say.
Holy smokes. So you grew up with no privacy from family or spirits, essentially.
Right. Yes.
Because holy smokes, with all those cousins and aunts and uncles. And I mean, that had to be crazy. So what did you grow up in the house experiencing? What's some of the stuff that you can remember?
Go ahead. I was little,
okay.
Little. So I didn't experience anything. And if I did, I was too little to realize it. But I think one of the best stories that they used to talk about was this was one of them old, you're from Ohio, the old 3-story houses. Mm-hmm. And usually the top is like a right out of a haunted house, unfinished attic, And
it's either a ballroom or it's an unfinished attic, depending on where you're at.
Unfinished attic. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
With the steps that you go up, and then there's a landing, and then you turn and go up. So he was having some buddies over, and I think they were going to have some beverages, and they were going to go ghost hunting. And this was early 70s, like early 70s. And so he had went up into the attic earlier in the day to make sure they weren't going to trip over anything or whatever. So later that night, they're going to go up there. They got their flashlights and stuff. They go up the first set of steps, get to the landing, turn to go up the rest of the steps. He shines his flashlight, and something or somebody took all the old mirrors that were up there and moved them right at the top of the steps. So when they turned the corner and flashed the light, and then they always said all they heard was boom, 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 everybody running back down the stairs. There was like people with looking faces in the windows, stereo coming on. It was like every member of the family had something that happened to them there.
So they think, okay, so now let me just point this out, though. That would be one of the greatest tricks ever for a brother or sister or somebody to play on something.
You misunderstood. They all didn't live in the house together. My parents and my sister and I lived there, but the family from visiting all experienced stuff.
Yeah. So while they were visiting your mom and dad,
yes, just either babysitting us or, because my mom was a little bit older than a lot of her siblings, and they were mostly uncles, and so they would hang out over there with my dad and stuff all the time. But they all, the only ones that lived there were us four. But even just visiting or spending the night or holidays, pretty much everybody in the family experienced something there.
And so they were going to go. So the place was so haunted, they were just going to go ghost hunting in the attic.
Yeah, he was going to just take his buddies up in the attic, and they were, actually, he said it was kind of supposed to be like a fun thing. You know what I mean? And he had just went up there hours before that, and the only other people in the house were my mom, and we were babies. Like I probably was. Tiny, like probably under a year. My sister was around 2 years old, so they talked about it. My mom talked about it. I don't, the way that they talked about the story so much, I don't, I lost my dad to COVID a couple years ago, but they never changed the story, and nobody ever admitted like it was one of the main stories, because they couldn't, how does that, that was the crazy thing I think that happened there.
It just shows you how amateurish ghost hunters they were when there's paranormal activity that happens and they turn and Scooby-Doo it the other way down the steps.
Scooby-Doo it the other way.
Jeez.
He wasn't embarrassed. He would tell you that too.
So you grow up talking about, now you said the family grew up talking about Bigfoot. Now, was that just because they were interested in that stuff, or did people in the family have experiences?
Well, I don't know if you remember, because this is really dating me and I was little, but like mid 70s, that's, I think, when all the paranormal stuff really got hot, and there was a lot of UFO stuff going on. Mm-hmm. There was just, I think it was when it really started coming to a head where people were talking about it. And I really don't even know how the Bigfoot thing fit into it. I remember a story, and I lost both my parents, so I can't refer back to them. But I remember one of the other stories they used to tell all the time was this. They were on the south side of Youngstown, and in these houses, it was a driveway, your house, little driveway, a house. So these houses were close, and something flew, what they said, between the houses and rattled the houses and lit up the whole inside of our, through the windows, lit up the whole inside of our house and the neighbor's house. And this was that same crazy house.
So
I thought there was reports of a hairy something walking down like one of our main streets. But, like I said, this was back in the mid 70s, but I know it was like hot then, everything was just coming to a head then, I think.
Well, it was, and I'm probably around the same age as you grew up, because I grew up in the 70s when all that stuff, and you had, you were coming off of the Patterson-Gimlin film. Mm-hmm. You were just starting to get I remember the books that came out when I was a kid. They always had ghost stories. Bigfoot, Bermuda Triangle was really hot in the 70s.
And you could only rent that one book from the library that had one little chapter on Bigfoot, one little chapter on the Loch Ness Monster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember, and I've told this before, the Scholastic book orders that we'd get on Fridays. And if there was a ghost book or something, I mean, I was ordering it. A Bigfoot
Me
book.
too.
I was ordering Loch Ness Monster. And yeah, I mean, and there was the shows In Search of, and That's Incredible, and all these other shows that had that. So how did the Bigfoot stuff start then for you, really?
Well, a couple things. When I grew up racing dirt bikes and stuff. I was a total tomboy. My sister and I were the sons my dad never had. And ultimately, he was a track promoter at a racetrack. And they primarily did hare scrambles, which is up in the woods, through creeks and that kind of riding. And we were actually in East Palestine, Ohio, and we were cutting a new track in for the race that was coming that weekend. And we were actually using sickles, dating us again. But we had drove up on this big tractor, got like through these thickets and stuff. And then once it wasn't as thick, we all jumped off and we were cutting. Well, I'm going to say I was 11-ish. And we kept hearing these tings on the metal of the tractor. And we didn't, we were kind of being loud ourselves. I remember hearing it a couple of times. My sister remembered hearing it. And then it went on for a while. And we were kind of, as we were cutting, we were getting farther from the tractor. And my dad called us back and he said, come on, we're going to go. And my sister and I talk about it. I remember he's the strong, and I remember his face changing, like went from us having fun to get on the tractor now. And I was a little bit young, then. So I don't know if there was much conversation on the way back down. But so there was a field with a big pole barn, like a big metal pole barn. And we drove down, and that's where the tractor was kept, in this pole barn. So when we got in the pole barn, he immediately got off the tractor and pulled the garage door down on the pole barn. And while we were standing there, maybe discussing, what just happened, something hits the roof. Now, it could have been a little pebble. It was a full metal pole barn, so anything's gonna. But there was this big ting, and it felt like it rattled. And I remember we both looked at him, and his face was serious, and he had a 465 Husqvarna. So he pushes his bike over to the garage door. And now me and my sister are like 11 and 12. We laughed about this all the way till he passed. But me and my sister are like 11 and 12 years old. He said, this is what we're going to do. If something hits this building again, as soon as you hear it, now he was already on his bike, ready to go. He said, as soon as you hear it, you guys flip that garage door up and I'm going. He's going out to look for it. He didn't even get finished saying it. Bang, something hits the building. Me and my sister throw the 11 and 12 years old, throw the garage door up. He kicks that husky and takes off for about 10 minutes and ultimately came back and didn't find anything. But the joke was like, he was in his high 70s when he passed. And as he matured and aged, when we would talk about that story, he's like, what the heck was I going to, like, what was I going to do? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what, we laughed about, why did I even, but he was in his 30s and tough and, so that I would say that's the kind of first Bigfoot thing. And when I remember after that, hearing a lot of stories in that area. So I think after he told a couple people what happened, because at the time, I don't know that we thought it was Bigfoot or a person or whatever it was, but he was going to go find it. But I think after that, people were like, did you hear somebody seen this or somebody seen that? And it was all in that general area. So
did he ever explain why he called you guys back to the tractor and to leave? Did he ever say he saw anything, or did something just keep hitting the tractor and he was like,
I don't know, to be honest, if there was something he was protecting us from. knowing we were probably better off not knowing. But my dad, he was an engineer on the railroad. He got stabbed in a bar fight. Like, he was a tough dude. And to make his expression change like it did, I would say maybe, I don't know for sure, but I would say he was probably protecting us. So he never said up until the end if he seen something or not. He just said the rocks were arched. So he said, well, pebbles, whatever was coming. But I remember talking about that and him saying something wasn't falling out of the trees, because when he's seen a couple that hit, they were arching and hitting. So, like I said, I don't know if at the time he thought it was a person or later in life, when we weren't young anymore, he always said that thought it was something like a Bigfoot, but he never said if he's seen anything. So, but I think if he did, he probably was just trying to protect us, He didn't want us to lose our love for the woods.
Well, either way, if something is throwing rocks, it's either a person,
right?
And even if Bigfoot doesn't come into the equation, he probably thought there's some Yahoo out here throwing rocks. I got to get my daughters out of here. I did, because you just don't know what's going on. Now, the fact that he left you guys alone in the building.
The fact that we're the ones flipping the garage door up, that was just something we laughed about in older age. I was like, yeah, think about that. And then you left us. Yeah.
Now, and whatever it is out there is like, oh man, it's easy to catch them now. They're in the building.
Exactly.
So, and you're right. That area is, and I.
Columbiana County.
That whole side of Ohio.
Yeah.
All the way down is, I think, finally being recognized as a real hotspot for Bigfoot activity.
Amy and I just did a outdoor show at the Campground Fairgrounds there, our big, fairground. And I was shocked, and I'm sure we'll get into it, an experience I had in Columbiana, but so many reports within 1 to 5 miles of exactly where I had something happen. So there's a lot of reports in that area.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited. I think Amy's trying to hook me up with a couple of those people, and I think you even mentioned somebody too.
Yes.
That had some amazing, sounds like amazing experiences there. But like you said, and like Amy said previously, you go to these shows, and you got a Bigfoot show. It's an outdoor show where people are coming to look at outdoor stuff, boats.
And those are the people, I feel like Amy was kind of genius in that area, because I'm sure other people have done that. I don't know, but I've never heard of anybody doing that. And we laughed at the first time. We didn't know if they were going to throw tomatoes or, because it's that's a certain group of people, and we weren't sure how they were going to accept it, or, and you got to have a sense of humor when it comes to this stuff, because, people say things, and so you got to learn to kind of laugh it off. So we were pretty tough skinned, so we weren't worried about that, but shocking. And the cute thing is, so there'll be a group of guys, and I grew up hunting, fishing, riding dirt bikes. I grew up a very outdoors lifestyle. So I can reel them in, being able to talk about the hunting and the fishing or the lures that they bought. And then I toss them to Amy, because she doesn't know. What normally happens is, it'll be a group of guys, and I always go, you look like you got a Bigfoot story for us, and just try to be approachable and fun about it. So people, and you get scoffed off a lot, and they're like, no, and then they'll grumble on by. And then more times than not, one of them separates from the group, swings back around and leans in and said, hey, I didn't want to say this in front of my buddies, but I was fishing, or I was hunting, or, and then they end up telling us they had an experience.
Yeah. And I get that, I get that too, not going from shows, but you get people that contact you, and they just don't feel comfortable for whatever reason. And they just want to talk about it, and say, because they want people not to think they're crazy.
Right.
And my family, the ones, my stepdad, my brother-in-law, those guys are big hunters. Okay. But here in Ohio, there's never, I don't even know that there's been some Bigfoot sightings south of us, but never really here in Crawford County. Okay.
Right.
Although we just did get from a sheriff's deputy last week, who said in his career, he had more than one Bigfoot call, and they went out to do, check it out, and couldn't find anything, which typically I think happens, when you're if you don't see it, you're not finding it. Right.
Right.
And which kind of surprised us that, in this area that because we had not heard, but it's everywhere else around us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But those guys would be like, oh, I mean, they'll say, look, we don't want to tell you that people are lying to you, but they're like, we've never seen anything, or we've never done this, or, and it's like, I'm sorry, guys, but would you really tell me if something happened? Because then you'd have to tell me I was right, and nobody likes to tell me.
And you know what? I have a permanent campground in Salem, which is in Columbiana County, that's open from April to November. And I'm kind of the unofficial activities director there. So the owner asked me if I would do a Bigfoot thing. And I was like, I don't really know, like, who would be interested or whatever. It ended up being really big. It was like a Father's Day weekend thing. And me and Amy helped like 50 kids cast their footprints. And it was just a fun day. So that night, we were going to do a night hike. 130 people show up for this night hike. So, and this kind of has to do, every lot of hunters, I've been hunting my whole life. So I got this young 16-year-old kid, put him in, gave him this little log. And I told him a trail in the woods. And I said, somewhere between here and there. And honestly, it wasn't even deep woods. It was a cornfield, maybe a 8-foot gravel tractor path, and then just some high brush. And then it went into woods. But I told him, just get in the high brush, maybe 6 feet off the trail, put this log kind of where you are, so I know when I pass you. So it was dusk-ish, but it wasn't dark by any means. So 130 of us go trucking up this trail, and I see the log there, and I'm leading the pack, and I got people trailing the pack, and I wait till the whole pack gets by it, and I go, all right, everybody stop. So everybody stops. And I said, do we all agree it's not even dark yet? And they're like, yeah. And I said, okay. I said, Braden, stand up. If you would have seen their faces, and the thing was, there were so many dads in that group, 100 miles, and so Braden stood up, and you just seen everybody's face, because 130 people, and nobody seen them. And I said, I did that for 2 reasons. One, for all you, I've been in the woods my whole life. If nature doesn't want you to see it, you're probably not going to see it. And then I said, which kind of inadvertently was a great thing, I said, Braden's dad and a couple of his buddies are also in ghillie suits. And it was like you had your littles that were excited and the parents that were bringing them. And then you had these tween kids that this is stupid and everything's stupid, and they're making me do this. And when I said that there were 2 more guys, they lit like, and that wasn't why I did it, but I watched they just changed. And then it was just a good thing. But I always say that when, because the hunters are, I've never seen. So I purposely put them there to see. Y'all just walked right by them, every one of you,
That's genius.
Yeah.
Now, did they find the other guys?
Yes. And what I told him was, it was funny. I said, I told the other guys, if you walk by them and you don't see them, they get to jump out and scare you. So I think one of the guys, and the way these trails were set up, once we passed them, they could move and get to another spot before we got there. So I think maybe they found them twice out of maybe 6 times. So, and by that time, once we got into the deep woods, it got pretty dark, but it was cute because, there's like 800 flashlights and I'm getting blinded by kids with headlamps. It was just fun. But like a couple of the moms were like, I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of scared. I said, listen, nothing alive in a 5-mile radius
is coming around 100.
Yeah, we're good. I promise you, we are going to see nothing.
But that was a great, but you proved a great point right there. And even if then later on, they only found them 2 out of 6 times.
130 people looking for them.
Yeah. So even looking, they didn't really find them. you
Right.
know,
And I made the rule that they couldn't go too far off the trail. And I had taken the people that were in the ghillie suits up in the trails earlier and showed them exactly what path we were going to walk. You know what I mean? So,
hmm
I told them, don't, maybe 5 or 6 feet off the trail. Don't go too deep off the trail. So it was good.
that's actually very brilliant.
Yeah.
That's actually, so you're into this. So tell us about, I want to hear about your story. I mean, did you have anything leading up to what happened to you in Columbiana, or is it just that's, you just went on this way with your life and something happened?
Yeah. Well, I've always been, interested the whole time. I have a kid. He's 23 now. So, you got to do the mom thing for a long time. And then I think when he turned probably about 15 or so, it allowed me a little more freedom. And I started, I just call it hiking because 99.9999, it's hiking,
hmm
but it's with my Bigfoot friends and stuff. So we did a lot of that and stuff. But I think it was 4 years ago. I think it was. I'm at the camp that I just said that I took all the kids on. And we got new owners at this camp, and the new owners allowed us. I've been at this camp like 24 years. I left. My son was big dirt bike racer, and that was a weekend thing. So we left for about 6 years, and then we went back. So the new owner allowed you to have golf carts, and I had to get a lift kit because I spend more time in the woods on the golf cart than on the trails. And she opened up all the rest of the property for us to be able to go up there on our golf carts. So it was Memorial Weekend, and I had a whole bunch of people at my camp, and my camper's right on the water. It's a nice spot. And I had seen people up in the woods all day. So when it finally calmed down, which wasn't until like 12:30 at night, where all my guests left except the ones that were staying, I said, hey, you guys want to jump on the cart and we'll head up in the woods and see if anybody's up there, whatever, just go for a ride. Now, earlier that day, I went up there for literally 5 minutes, maybe, because like I said, I had a lot of guests. And that was really my first time up in those trails. So I really didn't have a good sense of direction up there. I was up there very briefly earlier in that day. So just to get where we were going, I would say you have to go maybe like an eighth, maybe a little more than an eighth of a mile through tractor prints, cornfields on both sides. So we take off. We hit the end of the fields where you go into the woods. And earlier that day, when we were driving in the woods to the left of us, that's where I had seen headlights. And I said, well, let's go over here in these trails and see if anybody's in there. So we go in the trails. It's me, my girlfriend Missy's in the front seat, and my son's little racer friend is in the back. And poor thing, she was only 15 at the time when this happened. But so she's on the back of the cart by herself. Me and the other girl are in the front.
So she's facing backwards?
She's facing backwards by herself.
Okay.
And up until, this happened, we were just like, yeah, we're having fun. So we would go, in the trail, go a couple hundred feet, stop. Now, the field that we came from is now on our left, and the big woods are on our right. So every time we stopped, we were all focusing to the right to see, because it's pretty thick wood. So we were like, do we get any glimpses of headlights? Is anybody else up here? Whatever. I think we stopped 2 times. The third time we stopped, we were probably there for a good minute in this same spot. I'm pretty sure it was like 1:45 in the morning. So the only lights were way away from the campground. So the only lights are my headlights on the golf cart. So we're all looking to the right, and I hear a twig snap. I hunted my whole life. I know what that means. Something just snapped that twig. And so everybody hears the twig snap, and we all turn our head. Well, the passenger was blocked, but the little girl and the little 15 on the back and me, we both turn our head. Shane, when I turn my head, I mean close, like 25 feet. I mean close off the trail. When I turned my head, what I seen was, like if a track star's like when they're at the starting line and they have like one hand on the ground. So when I looked, something had one hand on the ground And when I looked, it pushed off the ground into a standing position and started walking away from us in the woods. So a couple things happened immediately. The little girl on the back was, what is that? What is that? Like losing her mind. A point I like to make is my golf cart was physically moving before I had a conscious thought to go. You know what I mean? Like my body did it on its own. My foot hit that gas. And I like to tell that part because when people say, why isn't there pictures? Why is that? I promise you, in the dark woods at 1 o'clock in the morning, getting my phone to get a picture, it wasn't even a thought in my head. It was retreat. So I'm going to say I looked for about 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. And, so it wasn't a long time. But like I said, I unconsciously put my foot on the gas. We take off. So the passenger's going, what was it? What was it? And the little girl on the back's going, go, go. I mean, panic. So now my adrenaline kicks in. I pass the only trail that I know how to get out of the woods and back to the campground. Because I do, your adrenaline's going. She's screaming. So we come flying out of this little trailhead and we hit this soybean field. Now, ironically, the field was like a little angled and the camp was over the hump. I stopped, maybe halfway up the little hill and I couldn't see the lights from the campground, you know what I mean? Because it was on the other side of the hill. So I had to stop and try to get my bearings because I think I was just so adrenaline up. I couldn't even think of which way we came in, like I had to get. So I remember when we stopped because I was trying to see can I see a light to the campground or whatever? And I looked behind me and the little girl, her veins were like that and literally like spit coming out of her mouth. And she's going, just go, just go. I mean, like losing it. So I kind of I think I know where we're going. We're not sitting still no more because she's, I don't even think she cared if we went deeper into the woods. She just did not want me to stop. So we find our way out. Her camp with her family was closer than my spot. So we drove right to her spot and everybody's all, I think her parents got a little mad. I think they thought I was messing with her. And listen, I would do that to my own kid. I promise you, I would take him out in the woods and scare. I wouldn't never do that to somebody else's kid. And if I did, I would tell her it was a joke. So when we got to her camp, they kind of shut us down, like now. So she gets off. Me and my friend go back to my spot and I see a fire across the lake. So we go over there and all these people are, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. They're all kind of buzzed up. And I was like, hey, weren't you guys just up in the woods? And I didn't tell them why, but it just wasn't a good vibe at that fire. And I was like, yeah, never mind. You know what I mean? So because could it have been a person? Absolutely. We were there. There was people up there before, but then I'm thinking, why? Were they trying to scare somebody else? And then why didn't they say, oh my God, I thought you were, or why'd they move at all? Because if they wouldn't have moved at all, I would have never even looked in that direction. So as I'm sitting at the fire, I think I called Amy right after that because I know that the best thing to do if something happens is to call while it's fresh. You know what I mean? Tell somebody while it's fresh. So I remember calling Amy, and while I was talking to Amy, the owner's son came over and he said, hey, I don't know what happened, but nobody was up in the woods, because the guys over there were, and he's like, nobody was up in the woods. Tell me what happened. So I told him and he's like, let's go. I'm like, okay. Did you ever have adrenaline pumping so hard that you can hear your own heartbeat in your head? I mean, I don't think I've ever, but I'm telling myself, this is what you do. Get your butt back up there. You know what I mean? You're going to be mad at yourself if you don't.
Every time I walk into the Cheesecake Factory and look over to my right, the adrenaline starts pumping the same way.
You know the feeling.
I know the feeling.
See all them cakes in that case, get all excited.
So you guys went back up. Okay.
Yes. So we went back up. I'm proud of myself for doing it, but I'm not going to lie. I'm mentally not okay. And the ground, and we obviously went back up the next morning, very leafy, very woodsy. We didn't see anything. So Obviously, I went back up the next day or whatever. So everybody was like, how big, how big, how big? And I kept saying like human size. So I'm not sure. Like, I really feel like it could have been human size. So for 3 months, I'm up in the woods all the time, didn't think anything of it. Because, I still thought maybe it was a person, So I have a niece, and she says she's 5'11", but I think she's probably like 6'2" and just doesn't want to say that. So her and I happen to be in the trails, and we got to that spot, and I go, you know what? Do me a favor. Because I had told her, I go, jump off the cart and walk towards that tree, because I never did a size comparison. Jane, she wasn't even halfway there. Throw up. Like, I
really,
was like, oh my God, it was not in fact human size. And I know I probably shouldn't say this publicly. I lied to people for a year and a half about why we couldn't go up in the woods. I'd be like, my golf cart's broke, or I don't got no gas. I couldn't do it, Shane. Like, like I said, I went up there for 3 months. But once I had my niece jump off the cart, it freaked me out. It really did.
How did the other girl? Did she ever recover from that? And did you get the chance?
It was funny. I didn't see her for like 3 months, and when I did see her, her parents were around, and I already knew how they kind of felt about it. So her and her dad came to my camp. Her dad gets on the cart to pull away, and he is literally still pulling away. And she looked right at me and said, "What did we see? What was that?" Because I think they didn't want her to talk about it or whatever. And I said, let's do this. And we went in the camper, we're by ourselves. And I said, why don't you tell me what you see? Tell me from the time you heard the click, you tell me. So I didn't say what my version of it was. I wanted to hear her version. Identical. Something stood up. She didn't say about the hand, but she did say something was down, stood up. And so I said to her, let me ask you this. Did you notice like where the shirt stopped and the pants started? And I don't know how much time you spent around 15-year-olds, but she gave me like that. That's the dumbest thing anybody's ever said, look. And she was like, there was no clothes, like totally disgusted. But I just wanted to say that to see what she said about that. And it was funny. Her and I just had a conversation about it. She wanted me to tell her girlfriend about it. And she's like, tell her what happened to us up there. So I don't know that she was as affected by it, you know what I mean? But
as she was in the moment. I mean, in the moment, obviously you guys were all terrified.
I mean, but when I say at night, let's go up in the woods, she's like, nope.
So did she? So she didn't really see. I mean, it was dark enough that you guys couldn't. It was dark enough that. Yeah, it was dark enough that you couldn't, for 100% at that time, say what it was, but you just knew it looked human.
It was definitely stood up onto 2 legs, definitely walked away. And like the color of like the Carhartt coats that everybody wears, it was like a shade or 2 darker than that. Okay. And like I said, I didn't think a lot about it because it could have been a human. And I think I tried to justify it, but something weird about it was, for like the next month, every time I wasn't actively thinking about something else, my brain went right back to that shade. Like every time I wasn't reading something or watching something, I would get that vision of it standing up and walking like over and over. Like my brain was almost trying to figure out or justify what it was, or you know what I mean? It was, it was interesting.
Wow. So and this is a campground that you had, other than you hadn't been in this part of the woods, but you've been in this campground for a long time. Years.
Like I said, 24 years. And that was about, so at that time, 20 some years.
So up until that,
also in Columbiana County.
Well, yeah, now so up until that time, did you think this was an area that there were Bigfoot sightings? Had you heard of any? Had anybody?
100%. Like Columbiana County, even just taking reports at those shows, that, like I said, that one we did in Canfield.
But I mean, before you had this sighting yourself and all these 20 years you'd spent at this campground, was this a place that people talked about Bigfoot being around?
No. Mm-mm.
So,
no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
now they're all into it because like the owner knows obviously because her son's the one that helped me, and then she's the one that asked me to do the Bigfoot day, and she actually let me film a guys from a YouTube channel came, and I called her and I said, here's the deal, these guys need some B-roll, they would like it where this happened. And then I text her that, and then she called me the next day and she's like, you know what, let them come, let them say the name, so she finally is like, you know what, let them come, let them say the name.
she's
Maybe
a
it'll,
business person. She's a
yeah.
business person. I mean, and we've talked about Bigfoot's big business,
Mm-hmm.
and
Bigfoot makes 130 people show up for a night hike. If I would have just called it a night hike, nobody would have came.
Yeah, exactly. Like spend the night in the woods with Tina. Might have been like three really weird guys, like
right, and me and a taser.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, and this is kind of cool. So it's cool then that you got to experience that. I'm sure, even though it was kind of terrifying, and it's kind of then, when you hear these stories from around that area,
Mm-hmm.
it's got to make you feel like, okay, I know I wasn't crazy, because it wasn't just you that saw it, it was her that saw it too.
People, yeah, or her, yeah. The other one just witnessed the emotions to it. And I did have one other little thing happen there. It was probably around dusk, and it was me and two girlfriends again, and we were just taking well, we might have been in the woods, I can't even remember, but we were out of the woods. So there's a giant cornfield. I don't know how many acres. It's big though. And so there's a trail that goes all the way around the cornfield, and then there's a trail that goes down the middle of the cornfield. So the thing that I told you about happened on that end of the cornfield. The thing I'm going to tell you about was all the way on the other end. And what is it? Subsidiary of the Mahoning River runs through the campground. So that's connected,
a tributary.
Yeah, I couldn't think of the word. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people
yeah
hypothesis that it goes, waterways, but it is a major waterway right there. But so we were probably where the trail we were on, that waterway was probably 50 to 70 yards through the woods. So we were just riding around. We stopped for reasons unsaid. And it was two of my friends that aren't Bigfoot people at all. And to be honest with you, they didn't even want to be in that area when it was getting dark. Like, so they weren't okay already. So we were just stopped there for a minute, and we hear this deep guttural growl, like all of us, like we stopped dead, coming from the woods that was between our trail and the waterway. So instantly I was like, holy shit, did you, I'm not to say that, sorry.
Sure. You just did. So
oopsie, I'm sorry. So we were kind of like spent 20 seconds. Did you hear that? What do you think it was? Whatever. And then they were done. Like, they were like, go, just go. I'm like, wait, let's just, I couldn't even talk them into it. They were like borderline panicking. So we go back the very next morning, like I don't know, early, like 8 something. I jump on my cart, grab a friend from the campground. I said, come for a ride. I don't even know if I told her why we were going up there. So I come around the corner right where that was, and there's a golf cart sitting there with just this little kid on it by themselves. And so I stopped and I was like, baby, are you okay? And I hear a voice from the woods say, yeah, we're just picking berries. So I was like, I said to my friend, I bet we got growled at by a bear, because in the daylight then I could see that there was 200 feet at least of wild blackberry bushes. This is the trail. These are the blackberry bushes. That's the woods. So, we started to pull away, and I said to her, I bet you that was a bear. I said, there's berries right there. And as I'm saying that, I go, oh my. And she goes, I see it too. And in the mud on the trail is this giant footprint. I actually casted it, but I was like, and she's like, and she's not a Bigfoot person. And she's like, I see it. Like, it was that, like, instantly. Like,
so it wasn't a bear. It wasn't a bear.
I don't think it was a bear. Yeah, I don't think it was a bear. I don't know what it was, but, like, little things by themselves aren't much, but when you put together that we got growled at, there's 200 yards of wild blackberries, and then we found the print, that to me gives it a little more. Maybe it was. I don't know. You know.
Do bears? Would a bear growl like that? Like to get you out of the?
I don't know. I really don't. I'm not very big on bears, so I don't know.
I have no idea. I mean, if any listener hearing this, I don't know enough about bear, what bears do to know that, and I've never really heard that a bear would growl at you to get you out of the way.
It's more like like a throat grumble. Does that make like a
guttural, like
like a little bit bellowy, a little bit maybe. I don't know how to explain it. You know what I mean? But I don't know because bears could sound exactly like that. But it was a pretty. I mean, it was a defined enough print that the girl that was on the cart with me that really wasn't into it seen it at the same time I did, because I seen it and I was like, oh, and as I started to say something, she's like, oh my God, I see it too. So, and it was right there. So
I just want to ask, what's the deal with you guys just leaving kids out in the middle of danger? Like you heard all this stuff and you're just like, hey, see you, kid. We're out of here. We're out of here.
Like I said, when you got 130 kids, I don't think we're not going to see nothing. I don't even think the crickets are going to come out.
Oh, jeez. But I mean, the kid, I'm saying in the middle of the field when you pulled her out.
Oh, well, it was his parents that said we're picking berries.
Right.
That's who yelled from the woods. Yeah.
So after his parents get disposed of, that poor kid is out there sitting duck in the middle of
and then I just leave the kid. I'm like, okay, have a good day.
Yeah. See you, sucker. Yeah. Holy smokes. So now have you like done any real serious investigations like with Amy up in this area and check this out? Or
I just honestly, when we do that, I just call it hiking because and that you've taken enough reports. 99.9% of the time it's not the people out in the woods looking for it.
It's by accident.
It's the mom and the cheerleader on their way home from the game and it crosses the road in front of them. So we definitely do a lot of hiking. And I had a semi-gifting area, and actually that was before I seen what happened, closer to the other side of the woods where I said, where I found a hollowed out tree. And I had a couple interesting things happen, and actually Amy was with me, and this could be anything, but the one time I had inside the hollow tree, I put some little stick structures up and I looped some glow sticks together and like hung them so they were hanging out of the tree. And then I took these sticks and put like in a triangle, like 2 and 1. And then I took white lucky stones from my landscaping at camp and then like put a white lucky stone in between each of the sticks, just kind of like experimenting with stuff. And so Amy had come to camp and I said, hey, let's go up there. I want to show you, it was more like a fun thing. So as soon as we started getting close to it, I was like, okay, hold up a minute because the glow sticks are gone, which, possums, raccoons, whatever. But I said, walk a little light and let's really pay attention because I want to see if we find the glow sticks. So we were, kind of treading lightly, watching where we walk as we're walking towards it. We never did find the glow sticks. And so I was like, like I said, it could be raccoons or whatever. But I was like, yeah, see, I have this. And I was like leaning towards the tree to show her. And when I looked in the tree, all the sticks, and I'm talking tiny little twigs like that I just, the opening was only that big. So the sticks were only that big. And so all 3 sticks, and they're just stuck in the dead tree. So they weren't in there solid. But we look in there, all 3 of the white rocks are gone. And then right in the middle of it was an empty snail shell. But I could be a possum, but I just thought.
Squirrels do that stuff all the time.
Right. But yeah. Or, how come it didn't knock the sticks over? Because those sticks weren't, they were pretty flimsy in there. They were just stuck in the dead tree, But that was in that same spot.
The whole gifting thing, I'm kind of, it's weird. We had a guy on the show from.
That's the only time I ever did it. Was that?
Well, there's a guy that was on the show, and I can't remember how long ago it was, but I'm friends with him on Instagram and stuff, and he's always sending me stuff. He does like he collects toy, like toys, like action figures. And so he'll go out to the spot in the woods and film content.
Mm-hmm.
And like one time he was out there, and this is a place where he does gifting, and he's always, and he doesn't know what it is, but stuff will get left. He'll leave action figure, like Hulk Hogan and stuff. And he was out there one time and filming a little content thing, and something made a note, something whooped in the woods. And he's like,
now what? Yeah.
Did you hear that? So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool that he does it all the time.
Yeah. And I did like some bouncy balls and stuff, and everything disappeared. That was the first time I ever went back and something was there. But growing up outdoors, hunting, fishing, do not agree. And I'm sure people are going to come at me for this. Gifting food. Like, you do not want any wild animal to ever associate you with food. And that's kind of like and if you do that, people that are listening, it is your deal. Go ahead. I personally would, that kind of, every time someone says they do that, I'm thinking, do you not date? You know what I mean? You don't know what's, I mean, we have bears and stuff around here. I just wouldn't do that.
Jeez. Yeah. I don't even get me started on the mail lady at work who feeds cats on her mail route, and then we come back, and she feeds them at her mail truck. When we come back, and you'll come back and there'll be like 5 cats hanging around her mail truck, right. like it's covered.
Thanks, lady. Thanks.
Yeah, it's like, and it's one of our mail lady. Thank goodness she's retired. Don't tell her I said that. But so have you had any other Bigfoot experiences, or are those
okay? Yeah, I was going to say, I hope we have enough time for me to tell you the story. And we really haven't told this story too much. I don't even know if we ever told it publicly. I'm not sure. So I don't know. You might be aware that Project Zoo Book was in the Wall Street Journal front page.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So we were going to the Alleghenies for the camping trip to meet the Wall Street Journal that did that report. So we had already told the reporter that me and Amy are like, we're the world's worst Bigfoot hunter. Nothing ever happens. You know what I mean? It's just camping, whatever. So the guy wasn't a big camper. He wasn't a big outdoors guy. So myself, Amy, a good friend of ours, Monica, and Kevin and his daughter, we all went up there the day before. And just to give you, when we turned off of the pavement, well, when we were on the pavement, a bear was running next to our car. I promise, I got pictures of it. So I just saw how far we were out there. When we turned off the pavement, we were on a really rough logging road for probably, dirt for, I don't know, 20 minutes before. And years ago, they had dug out little spots for camping there, but you don't have to make reservations. It's just, it's just out there. So we get there, nobody else is at any of these spots, whatever. So the day that we got there, we were more in prep mode. These guys are coming, we kind of brought stuff that we might not know, an easy up, a stove, a table, because this guy wasn't, So the first day we were just in, let's get ready for the Wall Street Journal mode. So we did all the things. We didn't put out any stupid recorders. We didn't put nothing out because we were kind of saving that all for the next day when he got there. So everybody goes to bed. I was being bougie that weekend, and I was van camping because, I worked really hard in my life not to sleep on the floor in the woods, so on the ground in the woods. So I have a little cot and stuff in my minivan. So I'm in my van. Monica's tent is probably 15 feet from my driver's side. Amy's tent's probably 30 yards past that. And then Kevin and his daughter were actually just in hammocks. And from Amy, they were probably 50 yards, from me, 70 yards, so they were a little bit out there. So everybody goes to bed. We had a fire that night and everything. Everybody goes to bed. I'm sleeping in the van. I had to do some business. And I say that because I know I was awake when this happened, because I had just got back on my cot, literally just laid back on my cot to try to fall back asleep. I don't even think I looked what time it was or anything, but we do know what time it was because of a text, and I'll tell you later. But, oh, and I had no service out there. Like, we were out there. So I get back in my cot, get all comfy. I'm laying there, and all of a sudden I start like having like this medical emergency that I never experienced before. And like in my mind, I was thinking heart palpitations, but I don't even know what a heart palpitation is or what it feels like. But something I could feel from my head to my feet, I could feel this intense pulsing. It's hard to even, like if you take your sight out of things, because I couldn't see anything, and you take your hearing out of things because I couldn't hear anything, and you're just trying to process a feeling. You know what I mean? That's kind of different.
Yeah.
So I'm laying there and 100% I'm in medical emergency mode. And I even remember putting my hand on my heart, like, oh my God, am I having a heart attack? And if this is the best way I could describe it, if this sound that I'm going to make was a feeling, it was like, boom, boom, like a pulsing. It's hard to explain because I've never felt anything like that before. I never felt things. That's why I thought, oh my God, is this a heart attack? And my thought was, we're a half hour from phone service and an hour from a hospital. Like, we are nowhere near. So I'm kind of like internally panicking. It was very rhythmic. Mm, mm. And I could just feel it. Like I said, in my whole body. It wasn't one part of my body. It wasn't just in my chest. I felt it in my whole body. So right at the end of it, and I'm going to say maybe it lasted like a little over a minute, and it was very rhythmic. And then right at the end, so it was like boom, boom, and then it went boom, boom, boom. 3 ones right at the end, and boom, stopped, gone. The feeling went away, gone. So I'm laying in the car, and I'm still like, oh God, should I leave right now? What am I going to do? Like in medical emergency mode. So as I'm laying there, I probably was just maybe falling back asleep. I hear all this ruckus outside of my van, and I see lights, flashlights and stuff. And I was like, oh, something's going on, and I could hear Amy and Monica. I could hear their voices, but I couldn't really hear what they were saying to each other. And so I get out of the van, and there's a really funny in between, but if Amy wants people to know that, I'll let her tell that part of the story. So there was kind of a funny thing that, that everybody was nervous, but something funny kind of happened because somebody had to go to the bathroom. And so we were kind of giggling because the situation was really funny, even though we were all like, so I come out, I hear them like kind of nervously giggling. And I was like, what's going on or whatever. So they tell me that they hear this scream that Amy, I think, described it like, I think they're called Tonga warriors, like, oh, that.
Oh yeah.
And, but really loud and kind of like it was close. Amy was up, and I'll tell you why. Monica, I think, was sleeping. So Amy heard it while she was awake. It woke Monica up. So she heard something, but not as clear as Amy did. And then Kevin and his daughter, their dog started going crazy. So he said he heard us, but he heard the nervous giggling. So he figured we were all okay. And he actually had to get his dog and put his dog in the hammock with him to get the dog to calm down. So at this point, we're just talking about the scream. So Amy's a tough chick. I've camped with her a lot. She didn't go back to her tent that night. She just didn't. Monica did. Shout out Monica, because she's a bad bee, because I don't know if I would have been able to stay out there. So Monica gets back in her tent, and I could see Amy's headlamp going probably for an hour. Like, so whatever she heard shook her. So the next morning, we all get up, and we're making some coffee, and everybody's talking. So the other 2 ladies and the gentleman, they were talking about the scream. And he was talking about, I didn't hear the scream, but the dog was kind of going nuts, whatever. So I'm listening, and we're just talking about that, and nobody says anything about anything else. So when we're done with that conversation, I said, well, in other news, I'm going to have to miss this whole thing. And they're like, why? I'm like, because I kind of had a medical emergency last night, and I'm really scared to be this far from a hospital. And they said, well, why? What happened? I said, well, laying in the van, and all of a sudden, and I start describing what happened, and Amy and Monica were like sitting facing the same direction as me next to me. And as soon as I start explaining it, now mind you, neither one of them mentioned it. As soon as I started explaining it, they both whipped their heads towards me, and Amy said, "Oh my God, I forgot about that." And Monica said, "Holy SH, I felt that too." So I felt it in my van. They both felt it in their tents. Now, Kevin, I don't know if he was sleeping through it. I don't know. I'm not here to say that it was Bigfoot. I'm here to say that I experienced something very frightening. It felt like a medical emergency, and then realized the next morning that 2 other people felt it. And ironically, once the Wall Street Journal people there, and we went hiking, we hiked up this ridge. And when we got to the top of the ridge, my phone started bing, 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 because I didn't have service. And there was a message from Amy at 3:10 that said, "Are you awake? I think something's wrong with my heart."
Wow. Well,
yeah. It was
so how on earth does Kevin and his daughter not hear that scream?
I don't know. I really don't know. And he did not hear the scream. And like I said, I think, and I could be wrong, but I think his dog growling is what woke him up. And I think the dog reacted kind of immediately. So he might have gotten woke up by the scream, but then heard his dog. And how, like when you're in a deep sleep, he might not have known. But he said he heard us. He's seen the lights, that we had our flashlights out, but he heard the nervous giggling. So he just figured we had to go to the bathroom or something. He said, "You guys," the next day, he said, "Why didn't you guys come get me? Like, you guys didn't sound panicked. Like, you sounded like something, like you guys were just up giggling because you had to go whatever." So he kind of just went back to sleep, but he was like mad at, I don't know if Kev, they call him Big Kev, Alisajek, you know him? He's like 6'9".
No.
He was like, first of all, if you ever have a medical emergency, wake somebody up. And second of all, so he was like kind of upset that nobody, went and got him. And then later on, about a month, I had horrible dreams, like scary. Sometimes I didn't even remember the dream, but I woke up completely panicked out of a dead sleep. So like a month later, we were all together, and me, Amy, and Monica were talking about it. And I said, "Listen, I don't want to sound like a wimp, but I've been having like nightmares." Both of them, Shane, and we didn't tell each other for like a month.
Well, I want to go back. So when they heard the scream, did that snap them out of the feeling that they were having?
It was about, I think, because Amy's probably the only one that paid attention to the time. So I think when because of the text that she sent, we knew what time we were all feeling that. Like I said, I think it was around 3 or something. And then she thought she was having a medical emergency too. So she couldn't fall back asleep. And she says she thinks it was around, you know what? We'll have to ask her, because I think she was trying to text somebody outside of the camp just because she was in her tent and she was scared. So I think we have times, but I think it was maybe a half hour, 45 minutes between whatever that was that happened to us and the scream. And the scream was, Amy said the scream was close.
So, wow. And because, and you made the point of saying you couldn't hear anything and you couldn't see anything. And usually, if it wasn't just a pure medical emergency, seeing something or hearing something is what would cause you to suffer like that.
Right.
So,
and that's what I said. And when you try to explain, when I try to put into words, I always say that about the senses, because when you take those senses out of it and you're just laying in a pitch black space, I mean, I couldn't even see my hand. We were deep in the woods. I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face. And you only have that feeling. It was so hard to.
Well, you can't. You obviously you don't think it's an outside force,
right,
affecting you. You think it's internal. I'm guessing.
And I knew it was something I have never felt before. And like I said, I kept thinking the word heart palpitations. I don't even really know what that is or what it feels like, but like my first thought was like something was wrong with my heart, but can't explain why I thought it was my heart, because the feeling wasn't more prevalent in my chest or anything, but I couldn't process what that feeling was. And it's kind of funny, obviously me and Amy are best friends. We talk about it. And a couple months after that, she said, do you know that part in Jurassic Park where the water glass, that
Mm-hmm.
and when she said that, that was the first, like, I don't know what that felt like, if a T-Rex is, and I'm not saying it was football. I don't know what it was, but when she made that reference, like that resonated with me. Like, yes, yeah, like I could picture that being, or like if you were by a speaker and the bass was loud, but
Mm-hmm.
imagine you can't hear like that pulse of doom, doom. I didn't hear that noise, but I always say that's the only way I can think to describe it, because I've never experienced anything like that before.
Wow. Yeah,
It was a little scary.
I'm sure. And it makes you wonder then what the human body really is capable of, if it can sense that there was something else going on and that all three of you guys sensed it, or was it something specific being given off with the purpose of disturbing you guys?
Right. Doug Hijack kept asking me, do you think you got zapped by infrasound? I don't know. I don't know what that feels like. You know what I mean? So I said, I all I can tell you is what I experienced. And I'm not sitting here saying it was Bigfoot or it was this or it was that, but I am saying that I experienced something I've never experienced. I still can't put into words. And then found out the next morning that 2 other people experienced the exact same thing. So it was, and like I said, Amy's tough. And for Amy to go in her go in her car. And like I said, then we're all kind of jolted for the night. And so I seen her headlamp, and her car was pretty far from mine, but I could see her headlamp going, for like an hour after that. It shook all of us. It really did.
I'm sure it's probably just that squirrel that left the snail show.
Look, here's the horrible part. This is in my mind. Okay. I'm like, okay, first of all, I'm in my van. So Kevin and his daughter are going to get ate first. And by the time they get done being slaughtered, I can find my keys, have it started, and go out. So like on that level, I wasn't scared because like I said, I wasn't in a tent, I was in a van. So, and then when the Wall Street people came, we had to have this really deep discussion before they got there and we all decided collectively that we weren't going to say anything because we already told them nothing happened. You know what I mean? We're like, it's probably just going to be a camping trip. Nothing, then we have this most profound experience I've ever had in the woods. And so we like really had a long discussion on whether to even mention it. And we all decided not to. We really didn't. I mean, we, said we heard, something yell or something, but we didn't even go into the details because we just thought it was just weird timing for it. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm just going to tell you, don't feel bad if you would have made it out of there, because somebody has to tell the story.
Right, exactly.
Somebody has to be.
Me and my minivan are going to be good.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Well, Tina, these were great stories. I'm glad I did not let you tell me any of them yesterday, because these were all great. I cannot believe Amy has sat on this story and did not share it. Wait till I talk to her again.
Yeah. And what's funny? Like I said, I can't even remember. I know we told everybody on ZooBook about it. And then just very recently we told somebody else, but we really we didn't share it too much publicly. It took a minute because like I said, we still don't know, you know what I mean? So
no, it's amazing story. Like,
yeah, it's crazy.
Like I said, it's another layer or another puzzle piece to the bigger picture of what is happening out there. Right. And I'm super curious to hear from listeners if they've had something.
I was just going to say that I would love to know that too. I would love.
Yeah, because I've heard singular people tell stories where they felt physically ill or they felt maybe they had suffered from infrasound or something, but I've never heard where three separate people.
Yes.
And
like I said, it wasn't subtle. It made me, but like I said, my panic was, I thought I was having a medical emergency. So until the next morning and we all talked, I didn't know that anybody else felt it, but it threw me. Like I was not, I didn't know what was happening. And I promise you, I've never felt anything like that before. I haven't ever felt anything like that since. So thank God.
Well, I appreciate you sharing the story with us. I thought this was great.
You get the exclusive.
Thanks. So tell everybody where they can, if they want to get in contact with you, or where they can find Project Zoo Book and see what is going on with that.
Yeah. The best thing is, I know that at projectzoobook.org, we are just getting our website fired up. And Sam's, like the Sam's Club is my last name. Pretty much the best thing would be just maybe look me up on Facebook, and or Amy has a lot of ways to contact her too, so you can always get a hold of her, and she knows how to get a hold of me.
And I know Amy, when she was on, was talking about some of the places she was going to be doing shows. Are you going along with her to all those shows, or some of them?
Well, I just did. The conferences are fun-ish. I mean, I like listening to speakers. If it's, I don't know, but I love doing the outdoor shows with her. So we just got done. It's kind of the end of outdoor show season right now, but I know she's doing a bunch of conferences. I think she's in Indiana and Tennessee, maybe Washington. So I've gone on them with her sometimes. I don't know. Maybe I might be a little burned out. Sorry, everybody, on the whole conference thing. You know what I mean? But she's definitely going. She's definitely got a lot on her plate.
Well, I hope everybody that's in your neck of the woods in Ohio that's listening to this will, if they have a Bigfoot sighting, either get a hold of me, or find you guys next year at one of those shows and
bring me some fishing lures.
Bring me some fishing lures.
And some of them cinnamon pecans.
Well, Tina, listen, thank you so much for hanging out and sharing these stories. And I mean, I'm looking forward to getting to meet you in person at some point along the way. Although I will not be going to your campground. I'm just kidding.
Come on, it'll be fun. We are having a big get together there, 19th, 20th, and 21st of this month. So hit me up if you want to drive up. We're gonna go out at night. I know you said you're not into that, but you could be the beverage keeper colder by the fire. How's that?
Listen, I went one time with Amy, and it was a complete. We had an experience, and I'm like 1 for 1. That's all I need to have.
Listen, though, this is, and I'm going to out myself here. It's very bougie camping. It's very bougie camping. So if you're in the camp, like on the water, I got an awning, patio furniture with cushions. It is not roughing it. Toilets, porcelain toilets at flush. Yeah, it's not woods camping by far. Yeah, it's very bougie.
We'll make sure. Okay, everybody. Go find Tina for the camping trip of a lifetime.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much, Tina. And like I said, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person and hearing some more stuff, because I have a feeling that you and Amy are going to get into trouble at some point again.
We hope so. Thanks for having me. I really had a lot of fun. This was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.